I don't know about you, but simple network management sounds kind of like easy loan repayments. It looks good on paper, but it might not be that simple in real life. Simple is definitely a relative term. You will find SNMP easy to understand, however, and here we're really taking an overview of it. We're not getting into a lot of nuts and bolts labs with SNMP, but we are going to talk about the three different versions of SNMP because we know anytime we've got multiple versions of something, we need to know the differences and similarities. Now, a great description of SNMP's purpose from Wikipedia. It is used mostly in network management systems to monitor network-attached devices for conditions that warrant administrative attention. Well said, and I'll say how I would say it. When bad crap happens, SNMP will be the one to let you know about it. And SNMP has these components that are going to combine to make that happen. We have the network management system, the NMS, which is the actual software that runs on the manager, which in turn is the device that's been assigned the task of managing a certain group of hardware, the managed devices. And I know those sound like, BGO names, blinding glimpse of the obvious, but that's what they're called. Now, the managed devices themselves, they can be anything from a printer to a router, and those devices are going to have an agent running on it. And it's a software agent, and that agent sends info back to the manager, either in answer to a request from the manager, which we call polling, or on its own. Now, the agent has access to variables contained in the MIB, the Management Information Base. Now, in some cases, the agent can both access the MIB variables and write them, which is RW access or read-write access. And in other cases, the agent can only access them, and you'll see that in there as RO. Now, SNMP is not just for letting us know about immediate network issues. It is a fantastic way to collect network performance data over time, and using that data, it's possible to spot issues before they become major issues. It's also a way to create a network baseline, which I mentioned in another part of the course. It's kind of an average, it's like this is what we expect to be seeing, and when we see something different from it, we need to check that out. And of course, from day to day, you won't notice, say, very slow increases in CPU usage, but the network management system is going to notice it, and it's going to bring it to our attention. Now, when we've used debugs in this course, I've stressed how important it is to run these debugs when things are going well, so you can quickly spot issues with debug output when things aren't going well. And it's just as important to have a picture of your network performance when things are going smoothly, and that's our baseline because that picture helps you spot problems in your network when things aren't going well. The thing is, if you go into a meeting and you want some new hardware or you want to add personnel, if you want to spend any kind of money whatsoever, if it's like any company I've ever worked for, you better have a justification for it. And if you go in there with, I guess weasel words would be a good term for you. Well, it's been a little slower. Well, how much slower? A little slower. Well, how much, what's the baseline? What should we expect? Good. You don't want to be the person using the weasel words. You want to have percentages in front of you, and you can demonstrate them, make them easy to understand, and SNMP really helps you do that. Now, let's talk about something we call a trap. SNMP uses some odd terms to describe some actions, and maybe not odd, we'll say unique. And let's take a quick and close look at that. We have something called a get. And in some countries that's an insult, but I guess it's spelled differently. But sent by the manager to the agent, this is a request for information. It's polling. And you're telling the agent, the manager is telling the agent, that is, I need you to send the value of a variable or a set of variables. Now, set, sent by manager to agent, this is a request to actively change the value of a variable or set of variables. So a get is just getting information, the manager is getting information, and set, the manager is telling the agent, hey, I need you to set this for me. I need you to change this value. Now, trap. This is sent by the agent to the manager. So this one's going the other way, and basically it's a scream. Not a primal scream perhaps, but it is a message saying, I can't wait for you to ask me about this. I got to tell you about it right now. And as with most urgent messages in networking and in life, it's a notification something bad has happened. The trap is rarely going to say, hey, things are just great. usually it's going to say, I think you really better check this out. And it could be anything from a link going down to reporting an unsuccessful authentication attempt. That's really up to us because we'll have control over those settings, what gets reported and what doesn't. Security schmirity. Even though SNMP version 1 has really been gone for quite a while, we still covered it in any SNMP discussion. And here, the CCNA is now concerning itself, thankfully, only with the versions 2C and 3. So we'll thankfully do the same. So we're not going to waste our breath talking about version 1. Now, you look at version 2C, and if you're like me, you're immediately thinking, well, what happened to version 2? There was an SNMP version 2, and it used a security setup that was actually considered by many as far too complex for its time. Now, without going into details, it must have been way too complex because SNMP version 2C greatly overcompensates for that. The biggest problem with version 2C, security is poor to the point of being non-existent. This version uses what we call community strings. I just love that name. It sounds so friendly. Oh, it's a you go into the community string tonight? No, it's a community string. It's a clear text password is what it is. And the strings can be set to allow those two kinds of access that we talked about earlier, read-only RO and read-write RW. And I'm going to show you after we finish the discussion here what a typical version 2 config would look like. And about the only security we have with that version is the ability to limit SNMP access by ACLs. So it's another good reason to know your ACLs, but obviously that clear text password is a major risk. Now, thankfully, version 3 is a huge step forward security-wise, and it offers several features and a couple of terms here that we will see discussed in the VPN section. These terms are simple, but sometimes they're used interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable, so make sure you do not try to interchange them on exam day. Encryption is protecting the contents from unauthorized eyes, and with version 3 we can use either the Message Digest 5, MD5, or SHA, the secure hash algorithm, and that again is just encrypting it so anyone looking at it or picking it off during transmission just can't immediately tell what it says, and hopefully can never tell what it says. Message integrity is making sure the message was not altered in any fashion during transmission. Authentication is making sure the source of the message is a trusted, valid source. And origin authentication is making sure that the source of the data is who they say they are. Now, SNMP version 2C offers one security model and level, so we're pretty much stuck with that one unless we go with SNMP version 3. Now, these levels I'm going to show you on the board here in a moment, they might hurt your eyes a little bit because there are those deals where they have capital letters, in the middle of the word. But if you just look at what it says, you'll know exactly what capabilities you're giving somebody with this. In version 2C, the level is no auth, no priv, and that's using the community string for authentication. Version 3 also uses a community string for authentication for that level. No authorization, no privacy, really no nothing, but don't put no noth on the end of that. Next level up for version 3 up the ladder is auth, no priv, or priv, which uses MD5 or SHA for authentication. There is no encryption at this level, so we are authenticating, that's where the auth comes from, and no priv or no priv for no privacy, meaning there is no encryption at that particular level. Let me scroll down here. I had that over here for you. And the highest version 3 level is auth priv, and that offers a choice between MD5 and SHA for authentication, and it uses the data encryption standard, DES, for encryption. Now, while you may see questions on both of these SNMP versions on your exam, at present, at the time of this recording, SNMP version 3 is recognized as the only current version of the protocol by the IETF. Previous versions are seen as historic. I love that word, historic, by the IETF, which is a really nice way of saying outdated. It's like saying legacy equipment when you don't want to say old equipment. That's all historic is. So that really wraps up our introductory look here at SNMP. I'm going to bring the live equipment up in the next video. We'll just take a look at a couple of commands in SNMP, just get you kind of familiar with that. And then we're going to march on to syslog, a very important topic for real-world networking, and we're going to do some work with timestamps after that. So I will see you on the next video with that SNMP lab.